calling in from. Thanks for tuning in tonight.
I don't want to make anything. Two people, so it's not.
Okay, I have 8:01, so we're going to go ahead and get started, but I'm sure people are going to be coming in. So welcome, everyone. It looks like we have people from all over the country right now, and I'm sure we're going to continue to have more join in. Feel free to let us know in the chat where you're calling in from. Today's session is all about becoming an exceptional leader. So we're excited to offer this as one continuing education credit and really just a workshop on leadership and how to hone in our leadership skills, especially when it comes to mentoring relationships. So thanks again for tuning in tonight. So for the session today, we have three main objectives. The first is to identify these leadership skills and attributes of what is an effective leader. We're going to separate what's the difference between a good leader and an exceptional leader, and we're going to apply exceptional leadership skills to mentoring relationships. So I'm Dr. Kristen Hicks-Roof, and then we have Karen Bethard, who's almost Dr. Karen Bethard, just less than a year to go. So we're going to be leading the session tonight. And if you have questions at any point, feel free to type them in the chat. Now, when we think about leadership, leadership is defined as the ability to influence or guide followers or members of an organization. And so a lot of people, when they think leadership, they think to guide, to lead, but also an influencer can also be a leader. And so that's really important in today's discussion because there's many roles that leaders play. And so we want to really talk about how we can all be leaders in which roles that we may lead others or influence others. So we're going to start off with a quick poll. So true or false, both mentors and mentees can be leaders. Do you think that's true or false? We're going to give it about 5 more seconds if you'd like to vote. All right, so you all will be in agreement that both mentors and mentees can be leaders. So if it goes back to my initial slide, leadership can be not only influencers, but also leading others. One of the beautiful parts of our RD mentorship program is that it is a reciprocally beneficial program. Well, at least it should be. If it's not, reach out to the program coordinator so we can fix that. But because it's reciprocally beneficial, hopefully both are going to be leaders in this session. So when we think about leadership, there's two different terms that get thrown around a lot. One of the terms is characteristics and one of the terms is skills. And so we're going to differentiate those. A leadership characteristics refers to those personal traits that may be possessed by a leadership. So that may be honesty, just competency in what they're doing, creativity, being an innovator, open-mindedness, emotional intelligence, and inspiring. So we're going to give you some examples about these leadership characteristics. So when it comes to competency, a leader is expecting to be sufficient in knowledge and skill in the areas and practice. And so this is something that both mentors and mentees can be competent in their abilities in leading and just competent in their abilities in their profession. Honesty, leaders should display integrity and they should be honest and sincere. So we want our leaders to be honest, being straightforward, being a good communicator. Those are all important traits when it comes to leadership. But leaders being honest makes you, as the follower or the person who's being led, be trustworthy in knowing that your leaders are doing what they say that they're doing. And then open-mindedness. Leaders should be open-minded. taking things from different perspectives, finding new ideas, new opportunities, being really innovative and being open-minded to change. So we're going to talk a lot about change and how we can react to change, how we can influence change, because often when a leader is taking a lead or taking the lead on a project or in a position, they often implement change. And so change is difficult. None of us really like change, but there's some ways to approach it as a leader to make those who are listening and following and working with you to make it more successful. One of the key traits when it comes to leadership, the key characteristics, sorry, is emotional intelligence. So I'm just curious, for those of you who are tuning in, have you ever heard of the term emotional intelligence, used it, thought of it? Go ahead and let me know in the chat if you've ever used this and maybe what you think about this term emotional intelligence. Looks like we're already having some responses in saying yes, they've used or thought about this. And we've discussed this in our previous professional development session when we talked about empathy. So emotional intelligence is being emotionally intelligent, being self-aware of not only your emotions, but also those who are listening or following or working with you. And so if we are emotionally aware of not only um, our own whatever is happening in our own lives or with work, but if we're also thinking about what's happening in the work lives of others or the personal lives, that could be like displaying empathy, right? So empathy is kindness, generosity, understanding. It's not sympathy, it's not feeling sorry for someone, but being empathetic. And that's especially important right now during this COVID time, because our mentors and our mentees and really anyone who we're leading may have some struggles, right? They may have some personal struggles, financial struggles. They may have hardships, emotional struggles. And so being empathetic is one trait of emotional intelligence, which is one characteristic of being a leader. Another thing with emotional intelligence, and it looks like a lot of people have heard about it, have used it. So that's amazing, because this is a key characteristic when it comes to leadership, is motivation. So how can we have motivation within, but also inspiring those who we are working with? Really promoting that autonomy. And we're going to talk about that in some of those skills that a leader possesses and how we can possess those skills as leaders ourselves. And then with emotional intelligence, self-regulation. So again, understanding our own emotions. We're allowed to have ups and downs. That's okay. Leaders don't have to be perfect all the time, but having that self-awareness and that self-regulation can help ultimately to be able to lead others. I remember I read a book when I was in grad school. It was called Self-Compassion, and it was all about being self-aware, self-regulation, and just being compassionate and kind to ourselves. If we're kind to ourselves, then we're going to be better leaders because we can be kind to others. But if we're hard on ourselves, it's difficult to be a leader if you're not happy in your own self. So I challenge you to, in the future, whether it's the next day or the next week or the next month, be self-aware. Try to become way more self-aware and using that emotional intelligence, understanding your emotions and your self-regulation and how you may influence or motivate those who are following you. And also social skills. So social skills are important as a leader, and as emotional intelligence, that's a key trait, because we need to be able to communicate, and we need to be able to describe and understand and teach and work with and collaborate. And we're going to talk about some of those skills. So the first part I was talking about that the leadership characteristics. Now I'm going to transition a little bit into leadership skills. So skills are abilities or strengths that a person may exhibit to help them perform a task more effectively. So skills can be refined, they can be improved, and this is something that we can all work on as leaders, whether current or future leaders may be in our profession. So some examples of these leadership skills is delegating, which, let me tell you, I am not always the best at this. It's hard with my type A personality to delegate some duties. So I'm sure some of us type A personalities on the call might also struggle with something like that. Listening. How can we listen more than talk? And communication. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these. Negotiating, so working together, collaborating. Organizational skills, so making sure that we're organized and we're good at time management. And self-awareness. You could see that self-awareness, that was part of emotional intelligence as well, which is a key leadership characteristic. So let's talk about some of these skills. And we're going to have some breakout rooms tonight to really talk about, and you can work in groups, about your experiences with leadership and how we can, we're often probably, or we probably all are leaders in some capacity or another. So we're going to learn about what are your leadership skills and what are leadership skills of effective people. So one of those skills is delegating. Like I said, I personally struggle with this. It is challenging for me, but leaders are expected to delegate, meaning assign authority, not just assigning tasks, but also encouraging them to have autonomy and encouraging them to take control of that task. So this is something especially relevant to our mentoring partnerships, because maybe mentors, you are delegating some responsibilities to your mentee on your project, but are you giving them autonomy? Are you giving them some control, some motivation within that? Leaders should work on communicating ideas and information effectively. Communication is probably the toughest trait when it comes to leadership, and especially in mentoring relationships. We find that communication is often the biggest barrier and one of the largest contributors to failed partnerships. Not because people can't communicate, but like we talked about in the first workshop, sometimes communication, people receive communications and deliver communication messages in different ways. So making sure that we're understanding how our partnership likes to be communicated with, and that we're articulate in those communication strategies. And then self-awareness. Leaders should understand how their behaviors impact their organizational outcomes. So what's their missions and their values, and how can that leader play a role in those mission and value statements? So we're going to hop in a breakout room, and the breakout prompt that I'll send via chat message too. What characteristics do you feel separate a good leader from an exceptional leader? So I want you to talk, maybe you've had some personal experience, or maybe you haven't. And so you're just going to talk about what you would maybe like to see if you are not familiar with this. So let me go ahead and stop sharing really quickly. All right. Let's pop into the breakout rooms. All right, here we go. So you can go ahead and pop into your breakout room. Let me know if you're having issues moving to your breakout. Monica, Anne Marie, Michelle, Dina, can I help you with your breakout room? Are you having any issues? Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Got about 30 seconds till all the rooms close. right, welcome back, everyone. So if you'd like, you can turn on your mics and let us know what qualities you highlighted, or you can type in the chat, or you don't have to turn your camera on. You can keep it off and just let us know. So for us, we talked a lot about just that compassion and empathy and being able to feel like your mentor and mentee are accessible and you feel comfortable opening up. We felt like that was a huge leadership characteristic that we all appreciated. If anyone else would like to share, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we will move on.
One of the things we talked about is like getting the group that you're leading to get to know them better so that you know what they like and if they want to be delegated to, kind of what their skill sets are, so that you can help them to develop individually, and recognition that everybody has different needs. And so you lead according to the needs of your people, how you can best help them self-develop.
In our group, we talked about conflict resolution and also about how skillful leaders should be, and also in not being micromanaged. And the other one was that they should have a very high quality communication, how they speak.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I do think communication, and we talked a lot about that with communication and just understanding and developing almost that rapport with your mentor and mentee. So that way you give them tasks and you're working on a project that both of you are passionate about. Because ultimately, if you're interested in something, you're going to be working a lot harder towards it because you are passionate about it. So thanks for sharing, everyone. So let's go ahead and resume. All right. So this is a pretty complicated slide. This is what happens when you're in research and you love tables and graphics. So maybe some of your professors are like this. I'm one of those professors. So what I wanted to highlight here, though, is really the different types of leadership and how effective leadership can be different. Get some people on mute because we have some background noise. There we go. All right. So you can see, if you look on the bottom left corner, you can see it's more that laissez-faire leadership, very laid back, maybe no goals and objectives, kind of willy-nilly, just do it when you do it. And then you can see that is, if you break this into four corners, that bottom left is passive, ineffective leadership. But when we move into more active, maybe an ineffective, we're going to talk a lot about transactional leadership. In the top right, that's where active and effective leadership is, and that's transformational leadership. So in this presentation, we're going to talk the difference between that transactional and that transformational leadership. Because that transformational leadership, you could see at the very top, is the individualized concern. So making sure that, like you had mentioned in the breakout rooms, that there's that interest and there's that passion and you're developing that rapport. That's essential when it comes to leadership, because you can understand each other and you can connect on personal and professional levels. That intellectual stimulation. So are you challenging your mentor or are you challenging your mentee to have that autonomy, to be intellectually stimulated and be passionate about that project? And then the motivation. So we're going to talk about this on the next few slides. So first is that transactional leadership. So it's an active but an ineffective active way that we can lead people. A transactional leader is one that maybe rewards or disciplines members based on their basis of performance. So I'm not to say this is bad by any means. It's a type of leadership, right? So just like we have different types of managers and different types of professors and different types of bosses and different types of groups we work in, transactional leadership is a type of leadership. And it really is focused on standards and task completion and compliance. This may work for some people. Some people appreciate this, especially because those who complete the task and they are compliant, they often get rewarded. But if you don't complete your task and you don't comply, you may be disciplined. So it works for some people and maybe not for others. But again, it is a type of leadership. But one of the types of leaderships that we really want to strive for, and it doesn't matter whether you're a student, if you're a new professional, an early career dietitian, or a long-term dietitian, being a transformational leader is important to not only you, but all those who you work with. So a transformational leader encourages interest among employees and colleagues, inspires them to think about viewing things differently, and promoting awareness of their organization's mission. So there's really 4 key characteristics, and I'm going to go over on the next slide. The first one is idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individual consideration. So again, those are the 4 characteristics of transformational leadership. So those are really big words. Let's talk about what they mean. The first one is idealized influence. Does the people who you're working with, you're leading, did you provide them with the mission and vision? So if this is a project, for example, did your mentor provide you with a vision of what they expect, a mission of what we want to accomplish in this program? Did they instill trust and respect within that partnership? So that is really that connection, that purpose that people want to see with an effective leader. The inspirational motivation, this is that open communication channel. So when we're talking about expectations, are you communicating those expectations? And is it being clearly understood? Sometimes we can communicate messages and the counterparty says, oh, that's not the way that I understood what you were saying to me. And so, as we talked about in the first session, that mentor-mentee agreement is really a useful tool to kind of think about that baseline and have that open communication channel. One of the things with inspirational motivation and anyone that you're leading is celebrating excellence and achievements. This can be big or small. Maybe they accomplished upwards movement in a task or a project, or maybe they got a grant or an award, or maybe they just did a really good job being a human, right? So that can be inspirational motivation. And so that is a way that we can be a transformational leader. Intellectual stimulation, are you promoting that autonomy and problem solving? People like when they can be creative, and they like when people trust that they can do the job correctly. If you have a micromanager, like someone had mentioned, then you're always worried that you're not meeting their expectations. But if we intellectually stimulate a mentee or a mentor, then we say, okay, you can do this. I trust that your job is going to be doing a great job. This allows for the creativity and the idea sharing. So when we think about any way that we may be a leader, maybe you're a leader on campus, or maybe you're a leader in an organization, or maybe you're a leader in your peer groups. Do you promote that autonomy? Do you empower people to problem solve and be creative? And the last one is the individual consideration. Are you giving that personal attention, especially for those mentors or mentees that maybe are working in groups, or there's multiple mentees, which we have several in our program? Are you giving some personal attention, maybe some group attention? And are you highlighting what makes people diverse? How can we include them and their uniqueness? Because that's the beautiful thing about dietetics and us being leaders in dietetics, is we all have our own unique story. If you look at Karen and I, we have completely different paths. We have completely different ways of where we got to where we're at. But that's inspirational, right? We have our own stories, and that's what makes us unique. So when we think about being a transformational leader, are you being appreciative of the individual, and maybe those differences, and how you can learn from those differences? Okay, so we're going to talk about what I want is you to talk about in your mentoring relationship. And I want this to come from the mentee and the mentor side. How could these various leadership qualities be incorporated into a mentoring relationship? And maybe you can highlight what you've personally done in your mentoring relationship. And again, leading doesn't necessarily mean that you are the leader, the owner, the CEO. It may just be that you are taking initiative on something or another. So we're going to hop into another breakout room and just talk about, are we what way are we being a leader in our mentoring relationship? So I'm going to go ahead and split us up again. All right, here we go. We're going to have about 5 minutes on this, and then we'll come back in. Got about 20 seconds to all the rooms close. There's still some people in the rooms. So you can either unmute yourself or you can type in the chat. What did you come up with? What are ways that you can incorporate leadership in your mentor-mentee relationship? Does anyone want to share?
Well, I think, having a kind of open communication, we talk about open communication, but actually doing it, I was talking about, sometimes I forget to give praise to my mentee when she's doing a good job. I just kind of like, kind of expect that level of expertise, but in, remembering to, to give praise, I think that that would go a long way in our relationship.
I was with two mentees in my breakout room, and both of them, they said that they really enjoying their relationship with their mentors, but they were saying that the reason is that the mentors give them very much freedom and flexibility, and so they like that. They like that they can do their things and give a direction from the mentor, but then they can have flexibility and also freedom to add their own creations to the thing. So it was a good discussion.
So I'll speak for several of the mentees that were in my room because they talked a lot about that, Shayla, is just having that autonomy and kind of like freedom. It was really empowering to them that they got to really contribute and they like that. So I think that that's a leader as the mentee too, is just being able to kind of take that stand and do it their own way. I thought that was really cool.
Another way for the mentee, and it was in our group, to be a leader is to communicate back to the mentor. So often as mentees, we look to see, or we, appreciate that feedback, like Marsha mentioned, but also I think as a mentee to share feedback with the mentor as to things that they are doing well as a mentor and how that's helping them in that relationship can be useful as well. I think both sides need encouragement, the mentor and the mentee.
Yeah, I love that, Karen. I think you're right. Both sides really do need that motivation. And that's where the mentee can really step in and have some of those leadership skills and give back and motivate their mentor. And, again, when we think about a leader, a lot of times people think kind of top-down leadership. But leadership is just influencing, is having a positive attitude on individuals. So I want you to really think about that you can be a leader in your life, no matter what you're doing. You can be a leader in some capacity. So I appreciate everyone commenting on that. We love the participation. It's really helpful to kind of get all of your perspectives in this experience and really how to grow personally and professionally. So when we think about a leader, a lot of times a leader will instill change, right? They're coming in, maybe they're new in management, new in mentoring relationships, maybe new in a club or new in a university. So no matter what you're coming into, leaders will instill some sort of change. And so there's kind of like this change curve that happens. And I'm sure you may have felt that you were on this change curve, and maybe multiple areas on this change curve during your mentoring relationship. Did you feel at any point anxiety or happiness or guilty or denial or acceptance or moving forward? Like, did you feel that? I'm curious. Type in the chat if you want. You don't have to. What did you think when you were entering this mentoring relationship, or if you're in a leadership position or you're being led? Have you ever felt kind of these responses and emotions to people that you've led? So if you'd like to share in the chat, please do. I'm getting some sound. There we go. So again, if you'd like to share in the chat, so people are saying, yes, when I got busy with classes and was worried I might not be doing enough for our mentor. Actually, we see that a lot. We see a lot of people, especially the mentees, feel concerned that they're being more of a burden or they're not doing enough. And this is where communication really plays a role in that reciprocal relationship, because everyone has kind of that fear. Are the expectations being met? You know, I'm scared, I'm nervous. But like Anna had said, you may be completely wrong. Like your mentor and your mentee, they're usually all nervous. They're scared. They don't know what they're about to get into. And same with when you're in any leadership role. People are excited for change, but they do get scared. So there's a roller coaster of responses and emotions. And it's our job as leaders to instill that confidence and that motivation and communicate what we expect. So how can we do this? How can we respond to this change curve? And thank you so much for typing in the chat. So there's 4 P's to change communication. The first one is explain why, right? Explain why this is happening, why I'm trying to instill change, why I'm being a leader, and why I'm doing something different, right? And then describe the picture. Describe what that change may look like, maybe in the short and long term. So if it's a mentoring relationship, describe what your endpoints are. Describe the role of the mentor or the mentee in this partnership. Plan, right? Express your mission and vision. If you're in a leadership role, telling people, hey, this is what I expect and this is where I see us going, they're ready to jump on board if they know this is happening. And then part. This is where a lot of you have commented. Identify the roles of each individual in relation to the plan, giving that autonomy and that motivation for each individual, and saying why you're the contributor for this segment of this project or this group or this collaborative project. So change can really go 2 ways. One, if the leaders involve their team and they're really excited and motivated, the team will treat the change as an opportunity. So a lot of our mentees find this as an opportunity to gain experience. And a lot of our mentors find this as an opportunity to gain leadership and mentoring skills. So if they are communicating right at the beginning, then this is an opportunity. But if leaders work independently on change, then change can sometimes be a burden. We don't know what to expect. We don't know why. We don't know what our role is. And so that change makes it a lot more difficult. And that's why we see that change curve of emotions. So how can we be leaders? We're highlighting a few things here, but this is just a small subset of many. So if you're an academy member, which some of you are, some of you aren't, we're not swaying you either way, but if you're an academy member, participating in those DPG or MIG groups, especially if you have a personal connection, maybe it's a diversity group, maybe it's a leadership group, maybe it's a certain culture or race or experience or professional management. So there's like entrepreneurs or a lot of different groups. Being a preceptor for dietetic interns, and so that's something we encourage our mentors maybe to explore. The Leadership Institute is a thing with the academy that they train individuals how to become better leaders. And on the student side, Although the students can participate in DPGs and MIGs. The Student Scoop is a newsletter that they're always looking for writers for students. They're student representatives from a lot of these different groups. So it's a great way to be involved and share your voice. For Fancy, in both virtual and in person, there's student host positions. So a lot of times you get discounted Fancy admission, which is awesome, especially when it's in person. And then voting in the A&D elections. So as we all know, elections are coming up. I highly encourage you to vote. Actually, one of our program coordinators, Karen Bethard, she's running for House of Delegates, Speaker-elect. So just put a little plug there, but ultimately you decide whichever way you'd like to vote. So that's all within the academy. But how can we be a leader outside of the academy? Participate in mentoring. So this RD mentorship program, we hope that you've had a valuable experience and really a learning experience. So if you're a student, you can continue to apply to the RD mentorship program. So we will have our next cohort starting in September. Again, this upcoming year, we'll start recruiting in July and August. And for mentors, you can also become a mentor again. But beyond our program, just peer mentoring. It's especially important for students. If you are a junior or senior, maybe you're mentoring a junior or senior, or maybe an underclassman about how to be a dietitian. Participate in organizations and societies. So groups, again, that you're passionate and interested in. The beautiful part about dietetics is you can literally do anything you want to do in dietetics. And so be a participant and be a leader in organizations that you have maybe an interest in or you're passionate in. Voice your opinions. So don't be afraid to have that autonomy and speak up and communicate your thoughts, whether it's in clubs, organizations, in policy. And then there's always trainings. Now these trainings are quite expensive. So probably for people who are really interested in leadership training, the Center for Creative Leaderships and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The Academy also has some certificates of training, specifically one that's all about advancing your role as a leader. So if you're interested in something like that, there is a cost associated with it, but it's a new program that just got released in 2020. So kind of bringing you some of the more recent research and more of the recent applications. And I just want to give a shout out to Maria. She's one of our undergraduate researchers. She helped put together this presentation, a really big chunk of it. And man, she did an incredible job. So I just want to give a shout out to one of our mentees, Karen and I's mentees, as an undergraduate researcher. So here are our references, and we're going to be sharing this slide set. But if there's any questions or comments, I hope you learned a little bit about how you can become a more effective leader, whether it's in your mentoring partnership or just in general in the profession and in your life as a whole. So again, I'd be happy if anyone has any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute and let us know. But thank you so much for tuning in tonight. This is our last professional development session. And remember, we still have February, March, and April, and then the program is going to end in April, sadly, but we hope that you enjoyed your experience. We're going to be sending that final evaluation survey in April when the program is completed. But if you're interested, whether you're a mentee or a mentor, you can also reapply for the program next year. And little side note, some mentor or mentees ask us if they can continue their partnership, and the answer is yes. You're not required to. You don't need to report to us. But if you'd like to continue your partnership in one fashion, whether it be formal or informal, you're more than welcome to. We have seen, we've seen students go on and do dietetic internships with their mentees or get jobs with their mentors. So you never know the network that you've created. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, so one of our questions, what's the most valuable piece of advice you've received about becoming a better leader that you've actually implemented? So I'll comment, and if anyone else would like to comment, feel free. It was all about being a better communicator and being more organized. I mentor a lot of students at one time, and I have a lot of different research programs going at one time. And so now I have set schedules when I meet with people, and I create, or my students create, meeting agendas for every meeting. And so all of our meetings now become a lot more productive. It's not just like, oh, what were we going to talk about today? We have kind of a set timeline as to what we're going to be working on. Obviously there's some flexibility there, and I'm being empathetic towards my groups, but that's really helped me. That was some of the feedback that my mentee said is like, well, I also had 2 children in the past 3 years, so I was kind of loopy, just having mom brain, I guess you could say. But one of the feedback that I got was just being more organized. Any other comments? What feedback have you gotten that you've actually implemented? Karen, you're talking, but you're on mute.
One of the styles, I guess, of leadership that I think is really important, and I guess because it includes some role modeling, but it's servant leadership. And so that was a style that was suggested to me, and I really am passionate about that way, because I feel like that in that leadership model, that a lot of what you do is you role model. And particularly as an educator, I teach at A&M, and so when you're trying to educate students, it's really important to role model for them the example and the skills and the passion or empathy that would be characteristic of a good leader. And so I think that role modeling and servant leadership can be really helpful. And that can be either in a mentor or a mentee relationships, because we all influence other people by the way that we behave. And so our behaviors being encouraging and thoughtful of other people. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's a really important comment, Karen. It's just like giving back, especially to our profession, and really helping to train the next generation of leaders, right? That's what we're all here for. So Denise is asking, what are some ways we can encourage or give positive feedback to our mentors? It was a really good point that Karen made. They'd never given it much thought. So if there's any mentors on the call, what would you like to hear from your mentees?
While somebody's thinking about that, I'm just going to tell you, one day I got to class and I had a note on the computer, and it was from a student. It was anonymous, and it was just like, thank you so much for taking the time to teach our class. I mean, it said a few other things, but they were all very positive comments. And so I think that kind of goes back a little bit to that servant leadership or that role modeling. I mean, just that thank you for them taking the time to mentor you, or thanking them for giving you that autonomy that you've enjoyed by giving projects. So sometimes it doesn't have to be like exceptionally big, but thank you can go really far in many ways and be encouraging. And I think that is an idea. I'm sure there's others, and I'd love to hear some of the mentors what they think.
So, hi, I'm Jackie. I don't have direct, I guess, feedback on my mentor, but I do have a bunch of virtual interns that I work with. And we're hosting a 30-day online virtual platform, and I told them I want any feedback possible, negative, positive, kind of braced myself for the worst. And what I got back from all my virtual interns is that it was only positive feedback, loving the program that we built out. It was actually like a boost to my team's ego, kind of because we were like really nervous because it was our first time doing it. But it was just that positivity from these virtual interns that really was really well appreciated, I'll be honest. Just because I think as dietitians, we have such high expectations that I was fearful that we were falling flat, but it turns out that we exceeded everything, which low-key we typically do. So it was just really positive, and that's awesome.
Yeah, Jackie, I'm going to comment on that too. I mean, one of the most valuable things as a mentor, I just love that positivity. If you come to meetings and you're excited about what we're working on, like I recognize that and I'm like, okay, this is going really well. Like you don't even have to say thank you, but if I know that you're in the mode and you're like ready to do something, make a change, like I love that attitude, and that is a win in my book.
And just kind of tagging on to that, I mean, like, think about when you're getting that kind of feedback, how it stimulates you and your confidence in your leadership ability when you're getting that feedback. I think it's good to, like you said, Jackie, you were prepared to maybe not have everything positive, and when it came back, it was great. So if something comes back and it's not positive, then to take it and to learn from it. But then, when it is positive and that passion that Dr. Ruth's talking about, allowing that to build your confidence and encourage you to do the next step of leadership, and think about how you can encourage someone else to lead. Because it's kind of that giving back concept, I think.
When, like Jenna mentioned in the chat, is on the mentor side, just letting us know that you're meeting our expectations, that we're on the, like, mentors are getting that feedback, that the expectations are being met on both ends. I think that's really impactful, because both parties will kind of be able to have a nice sigh of relief, because they understand you guys have like a mutual agreement. So really good discussion. Any more comments? I know we only have 2 minutes left. So any questions, comments about leadership? We hope that you gained something about becoming a better leader here in this workshop today. Okay, well, without any other questions, thanks so much for tuning in. And I encourage you, if you're an Academy member, please go ahead and vote. One of our own is nominated, and we really want to see her go through, but really any vote is a good vote. There's such a low turnout of voting in our Academy. So we just encourage you to vote whatever way you would like to vote. But have a great night. We will not see you again virtually, but we will be sending out some final evaluation surveys in April. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.